Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Shan and today I've got for you my reading wrap up for June, and I have fully got my reading mojo back, you'll be pleased to hear. And there were 8 books that I read this month, which I didn't anticipate, especially after a slow start. So I'm going to crack on because there are a lot of books that I'm going to share with you. First up, the first book I read is The Debs of Bletchley Park by Michael Smith. I've had this book in my to be read pile for about 2 years. I don't know if it was the kind of smallish writing that put me off picking it up. I don't really know. I didn't particularly enjoy it. I feel like there are all sorts of books written about Bletchley Park and what went on there, and this one just falls a bit flat. And I feel like it could have been a lot more empowering, a lot more kind of raising women up for what they did during the war, but it was more like a bit mundane. I don't know if I'm doing it a disservice saying that, but I just felt it fell a bit flat. It was far more kind of informative than evocative, and I would have liked to have felt inspired when I finished reading it rather than finished that, let's read something else. So it's basically the story of the women at Bletchley Park, the roles that they had there, how there were so many women there. A lot of it seemed to be how they got their jobs, whether it was through kind of like relatives they knew or the fact they were doing well at school, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm not going to go into it too much because I really didn't enjoy it. Obviously these are real people's stories of what happened, but I just felt they were sort of scattered around, and it might have been better if it was just like one person, you know, rather than this person, then a little bit of this person, then oh, let's go back to that person. Just felt a bit mismatched. I like the pictures in the middle. Maybe that tells you about how much I enjoyed reading it, that I like the pictures. But pictures of the actual women that the book is about, that was kind of quite informative. And I love the kind of spirit that there was around that. But yeah, not going to go into too much detail because it's not one I will read again. Second book I read this month is The Night Tiger by Yancey Chu, and this book is amazing. It's set in 1930s Malaya and centres around a boy called Ren, who is a houseboy, and his master has set him this task that when he dies he has 49 days to find his master's finger and reunite the finger with the body of the master in the grave. So it's a bit random, let's be honest, but this is a tradition. And then we also meet Jilin, and she is a dressmaker's apprentice. She's come from quite a troubled background. Her mum remarried and married someone who was quite violent towards her step-sibling. She's also like totally besotted by her step-sibling, which is a kind of storyline I felt the book could maybe do without. I don't think it needed that. So we're following these two kind of main characters as they go through their lives, seeing the different traditions that there are, watching people get married off. It's really beautifully written in a way that really, like a really evocative way, so you can really picture yourself being there. And you never really like, I don't know, it just feels a bit weird that they're obviously looking for a severed finger. That feels quite a morbid thing to be doing, but actually during the book it never feels like it's a morbid kind of mission that they've been set. But this book is wonderful. This was one of the Reese Witherspoon's book club books for last year, I think. I've wanted it for so long, and I finally got it thanks to my Amazon wishlist and someone who bought it me from there, and I'm eternally grateful because I loved it so much. The third book I read this month is Jemima Small versus the Universe. Now I got this second-hand on Amazon. If you've watched my previous video, which was how to save money on Amazon, which I'll link here, you will see that buying second-hand is a good thing to do, especially with books, because you can get a very good deal. Jemima Small versus the Universe is an incredibly uplifting, powerful book. It has some trigger warnings. If you have been bullied in the past for your size, then you might find it difficult to read. I really enjoyed the book. I bought it for my daughter who is 9, and I wanted to read it before I gave it to her. I think I will give it to her maybe over the summer, maybe a bit later. She's not quite ready for it yet, I don't think, but it's a really good book. There's none of that teenage angst. Jemima's mum has left her with her dad and her brother, and her aunt lives kind of in the garden basically. So she doesn't have a normal family setup. Jemima is incredibly intelligent. She knows every fact about everything ever, and she just doesn't fit in at school. And I think so many of us can relate to that not fitting in at school. And I reckon that probably even those people that you thought fitted in at school definitely felt they didn't fit in either. It's a horrible time when you're that age and you don't know who your real friends are. You're trying to work your way through life, and it's hard. So this book is really powerful. It's about her kind of finding out who she is and loving herself the way she is. And I think it's a really strong book for young girls and boys to read too. The fourth book I read this month is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I was really excited to get this because it meant that the library had not reopened, but they've started doing a service where they literally bring the book to your house. This one I'd had on order. It came in the day before lockdown and I was going to go get it the day of lockdown, but obviously everything's shut, so I couldn't. This is by Sally Rooney, same author as Normal People. You will all know how much I loved Normal People. It was such a good book. This book didn't quite hit the mark in the same way for me. Sally Rooney writes so well, just really, really beautiful prose, and it's really easy to kind of slip into those friendships that she's writing about. This story is about a girl called Frances who is 21. She's at university and it is best friends with a girl called Bobby, who they've been in a relationship before, but they're just kind of friends now. And they meet a married couple called Melissa and Nick, and what follows is a tale of affairs and how those can impact on a marriage and all kinds of stuff. And it gets a bit messy and complicated, and I think that's what Sally Rooney writes so well, those kind of awkward, realistic life stories, life moments of things like that happening, because stuff like that does happen, and it's nice to have it written in a way that you can totally relate to it. Otherwise you're kind of like, oh, I don't know how that would feel. But she writes awkwardness insanely well, and I actually quite like that in an author. My favourite author, Frederick Backman, writes awkwardness in just the most sublime way, and I think as a totally awkward person, I like to be able to read about people who are as awkward as me. So I think there's something in there with me. Anyway, I did enjoy this book, not as much as Normal People, but it was good, and it's great to have the library back open again in some form. The fifth book I read this month is After the End by Claire Mackintosh, and this story is about a couple called Oliver and Pip, and they have a son who is all of a sudden very ill with a brain tumour, and they have to make the decision about whether or not they are going to turn off his life support. And the end of the book takes two different paths. One is if they had turned it off, and one is if they hadn't. And I did get a bit confused when it got to the two different paths as to which path I was currently on, because I'm easily confused when we've got the same characters but doing different things, because it changed from chapter to chapter. It was a beautifully written book. This is very unlike Claire Mackintosh's other books. It definitely has trigger warnings if you've had a child in intensive care, in SCUBU, in any kind of hospital, very, very ill. It goes into a great amount of detail. This is told utterly from the heart because Claire and her husband had to make this very decision about their own son. So it's an incredibly personal book, and she also has a serious amount of first-hand knowledge about it, and I think you can really tell that whilst reading the book. It is raw and emotional and beautifully written and so emotive, and makes you really question what you would be doing in a similar situation, and also makes you, you know, look at the people around her and how they reacted and how they really weren't friends because they really didn't help at all. So there's all kinds of things that book encompasses, and I just loved it. Really, really good book. Well written, but just beware of the trigger warnings and don't read it if you think that it might trigger you. The sixth book I read this month is Watching from the Dark by Githa Lodge. What I hadn't realised at the start, basically Githa Lodge is my sister's carer's sister, if that makes sense. So my sister's carer sent me this book because she knew that I didn't have many books, but what I didn't realise until the very end, because I clearly don't read the first few pages, as in like these pages, I never look at, it's signed. How nice is that? To Sian, with much lockdown love and hoping you enjoy. So that's very exciting. I've read one of her books before. They are really good kind of modern thrillers and I really enjoy them. This book is about a girl called Zoe, and in the first 2 pages Zoe is murdered. Only her boyfriend Aidan is watching through Skype. So he sees it happen, he doesn't see who does it. She's in the bath, he watches someone come in to the house, he can't see the bathroom, he hears a struggle and he calls the police, but he doesn't know where she lives. Very complicated. And Zoe has lots of friends who each one of them have some kind of motive for having killed Zoe, and also Aidan, of course, because he is her boyfriend, and yeah, there's all kinds of things that tie into this. Everyone could be guilty, basically. So the story is looking at friendships and relationships, and it's twists and turns the whole way through. I did not guess who the murderer was, which I always love in a thriller. If I've managed to be kind of completely hoodwinked by the author, then I like it. I really enjoyed it. The narrative is good, the characters are good. Some of the characters of her friends are really hard to like, but that kind of adds to the moodiness of the book, which I really enjoyed. The 7th book I read this month is called The Husband's Secret, and this book was actually by Leanne Moriarty, and I've read some of her books before and I either love them or hate them. This one was a definite hit. Again, I should have read the beginning, in that I tend to skip straight to like the first chapter. So what I missed with this one, by flicking straight to chapter 1, was the bit that said Monday. So what I found at the beginning was you are thrown in with lots and lots of different characters in each of the first few chapters, and it's a bit overwhelming because there are so many different characters and you just think, how am I ever going to know who all these people are and how they kind of intertwine? But obviously as the book goes on they all kind of merge together, which makes a lot more sense, so it becomes a lot easier to read. Again, it's a thriller. It is a book which has kind of a moral dilemmas all the way throughout, and it was really interesting to see how the different characters reacted to that. And I'm not even going to try and tell you all the different characters' names because there really are quite a lot, but they do tend to make more sense as the book goes on. And I did end up thinking this was a brilliant book. It was one that I really enjoyed. Again, I didn't see the end coming, and I really liked the way it's kind of all tied together. So that was a book that I enjoyed. And the final book I read this month, the 8th book, is called Luckiest Girl Alive. The last 2 books were ones that a friend lent me. I've been given quite a lot of books this month, and this one was one that she said was basically a good American read. It's very American. There is a lot of kind of, it's about high school in America, so there's a lot of teen angst. I enjoyed it, but I don't know quite how I felt about it. It wasn't a book that I would read again, and it wasn't a book that I would necessarily recommend to read. I don't know, I feel a bit harsh saying that. So Luckiest Girl Alive by Jessica Knoll, and follows the story of a girl called Annie, and the book switches between Annie's kind of teenage life and her life now, where she is very successful in what she does seemingly. She's engaged to be married, and she's asked to film a documentary about her past, about things that have gone on in her high school, which you actually don't know about until right near the end of the book. And she has agreed to do this. Her partner seems kind of almost too good to be true, but she's kind of unraveling and having big doubts about getting married. So you kind of see all the things that happened to her as a teenager. Again, this one has some trigger warnings for rape, so if you feel uncomfortable reading about that, then be careful, maybe just don't read it. So there's all these kind of things that have happened to her at parties, house parties, when she's a teenager, as she's grown up. And again, it's kind of a not fitting in at school, not really knowing who her friends are, and the friends that she makes maybe not being the best friends that she could have made, and then her being kind of ousted from the cool group, but fundamentally that saves her life. So I can't tell you too much about this one without giving too much away. I enjoyed it, but it's very angsty. There's a lot of teenage emotions going on, and there's a lot of plot in this story, if that makes sense. There's just a lot of stuff. It encompasses an awful lot of different things that have happened to one person. So it is a book that I did enjoy reading, but I just didn't see necessarily how kind of all those things fitted into that one main book. Those are the 8 books I read this month. I don't know if I'm going to get as many read in July. I finished the last one kind of right on the evening of the 30th of June, and I've struggled to start one so far in July because I just feel like I've just kind of gone from picking up, always picking up a book to now not quite knowing. I think my brain maybe needs a little bit of a rest for July. We'll find out. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you again soon. Alright, bye!